And I think we've actually got you. That's the start of the video. I don't know why.
Oh,
But if anyone can hear me, it's Paul here with New World Visions, and this is the episode 2 of the series. We've got Jane here, Jane Holroyd, who's going to very kindly doing a presentation for us about what Jane's doing in the community in her neck of the woods. Are we allowed to say where you are, Jane?
yeah, Ambleside. Yeah.
Beautiful Ambleside in England, in northwest England, where all the hills, all the mountains are, the lakes. Beautiful. Right. So what I'd like to do, Jane, is ask you, what this is all about is about talking about positive things, about creating the world in which we wish to see,
Yeah.
about getting inspired by people. And I know
Yeah.
you're one of the most inspirational people I've met over the last couple of years.
Oh, thank
And
you.
you're doing a range of things, which I think we're going to dip into. And then what we'll do, what we decided to do, did we not, was to specialize in the certain areas, go into more of these areas
Yeah.
in more depth at a
Yeah.
future episode, possibly on the 29th.
Yeah.
So if you want to give us a 10 minutes or so talking about what you want to talk about, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
Okay. So what we're doing in the Lake District is we have set up what we're calling our health service. That is a group of, it's now grown to 37 people who have a very active and long-standing interest in health, and that includes people that are practitioners in the natural health sphere, also people that are working in the NHS as nurses or doctors or occupational health people, as well as spiritual people, people doing past life regression, people doing dowsing. Then we've got reflexologists, Alexander technique people, people doing work with crystals, or there's a really broad range of interest and skills of people. So what we have in common is that we all want to create this, we have this vision of this future where people will be able to access a community-based health service, which is a very approachable and very supportive way of helping people with their health issues, but also it is a very well informed and very logical way of looking at health problems. So the only thing we don't want to be involved in really is big pharma. So while some people in our group would not want to approach the health service for that, the National Health Service, for that reason, some people obviously would want to, and would still want to use the NHS for like a triage situation or an emergency situation at the side of the road, or God forbid anything dreadful happens like that. So there's quite a range of opinion, but one thing that everybody is certain is that they want to support people to stay out of the clutches of big pharma, really.
Yeah. So all these people that you got in your circle, or whatever you want to call it, in the community, are they actually living there? They're not coming into the area to provide these services. They're all actual locals, are they?
Yeah, all locals. I mean, people can come in, like from, say, for example, we have people that are working 30 miles away. So the Lake District, as you know, is very, very spread out anyway. So we're not used to working like you would do in a city where you just travel 4 or 5 miles and it's everything that you have to travel, I don't know, half an hour to a supermarket anyway. So it does cover geographically, it covers a broader range. But there's people doing sort of remote work as well. So I don't think geographically you necessarily have to be there.
Mm.
However, we do have a drop-in session in Kendal on a Saturday morning, and that is very much in the present. That is very much face-to-face. That is a very much community space where we have, you know, wooden tables and a little kitchen, and we have biscuits and we make a drink and, you know, have a chat. And so somebody might come in, and if they're happy with it, like for example, last week we had a woman come in with 2 kids that she was particularly worried about because they had snuffles, and there's a wealth of experience. I mean, there's a lot of parents there as well, and so I think that we felt that that was a case of her needing to be connected with other like-minded people, and just to be reassured and to feel a lot more comfortable in herself about not being isolated, I suppose. And as we know, isolation as being such a huge factor that we are so keen for it to be completely the opposite, to be all inclusive, to be a community supportive experience. So, you know, it's friendly. There's no waiting list, or there's no appointments. It's a new paradigm. It's a new paradigm, and it's to do with being included and being supported.
Yeah. And so are people then, so you got the Saturday drop-in centre, you then don't have a space where, whether it's the same place or not, where everyone is then providing those services. As you said, there's actually going to be people who need the service or services. They're going to go to the practitioner, wherever they might be. So you're not using like the community hall, things like that. Obviously, it's an option for anyone in different areas, or even there eventually for convenience. But I think it's something attractive, certainly something attractive about Ambleside, because it's just one of the world's most beautiful areas.
Certainly is.
Yeah. And I know also, I think there's something special about that. I used to use a kinesiologist to look at my health, and I would go to her house and in a local village. But I think there was something nice about that. It's, you know, you're going to someone's home. If it's a home, it's welcoming, and whatever it is, whether it's a home or a working environment, I think, like you said, you mentioned wood, which is one of my favorite materials. Whatever it is, the environment should be welcoming and inviting, and shouldn't really feel alienating. I mean,
no, not at all.
It may be clinical, but actually there's a way of making clinical feel inviting as well, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I mean, it might be that the clinical stuff doesn't happen at the drop-in centre, but certainly we have like rooms where people could have a healing, or they could have sit down and have a private talk or a chat if they wanted to. I mean, what we're envisaging is, because this is evolving, because obviously this has not been done before, so this is to evolve with the people that are involved in the group and the people that come to us. So so what we're envisaging is people have a safe space if they want to tell their story, which we're calling it, which I suppose is like a counselling session, which is like sort of an empathic, focused listening, I suppose. And then they might, if they engage with that person could become their buddy, and their buddy would be able to help them navigate all the different options that they might have for their particular problem that they're coming with. So they might have their buddy, and so you see, what we're going to do is have a video for each practitioner on our website, and then a lot of information on the website, so people could access that on the Saturday morning with their buddy if they wanted to, and start to make their choices, and then they contact that practitioner, you know, direct. That's the way we're thinking it's going to work. It might
so not centralized, but actually just empowering people just to get on with it themselves directly, not going through a central network. But if they want to hook up with people, they're going to go through maybe the website, and obviously that can direct people to the drop-in centre on a Saturday as well, every Saturday.
Yeah, this is going to be about empowering people. This is about not giving your power away to experts This is about taking responsibility for your own health, but obviously that needs to be supported and encouraged and facilitated. So that's what we're setting up in the Our Health Service group.
Yeah, two things. I want to ask you what the challenges are and might be, or what you foresee, and maybe the sort of questions that people have they been dealt with satisfactorily? But have you been inspired by anyone else, or do you know anyone else or any other communities that are doing a similar thing?
Well, I believe that there are, and there's people on our health chat that are watching from other communities, other parts of the country. So I can foresee, communication between other groups in the country, which would be great, because there's no point in everybody inventing the wheel, but at the same time,
Wheel,
yeah, lots of people will have really good ideas, and because this is such a creative, formative, evolving time, this is the time for input, really, and ideas and suggestions.
Yeah, we're kind of feeling our way now. Pam, Dr. Pam Popper has just joined us. Hi, Pam. Thank you very much for joining us here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I'm sorry about the mess up last time. We actually arranged for Pam to join us just when the clock's moving forward in the UK, and so we were at 1 hour out of sync. Obviously, we were not realizing the United States would not be 1 hour forward as well. We spring forward and we fall back. So our clocks go back in the autumn and fall. They go forward in the spring. So we must remember that one for next time. In fact, not have any Zooms around that time ever again.
Just leave it.
There we go. So I'll just tell Pam also, because it's quite relevant to this. What we're doing here is we're talking to Jane Holroyd, who's a dear friend from the last couple of years, from all the things we've been involved with. I met Jane on a tube in London, going to an event, shall we say, in London, one of those very popular events that keep reoccurring.
But didn't end that well for me. Yeah.
And there was Jane with her blackguards and talking to very interesting people who took a keen interest in her. But anyway, we're talking about health today, not particularly other issues. This is all about the positive aspects of what we can be creating with health. And I've invited Pam on because she's another inspirational person who I've been following Pam for quite a while. Not only about health, but on political matters as well, and the legal things or the hoops that people find themselves having to go through to get things done. So I'm going to hand over in a few minutes, if you don't mind, Pam. How long do you have, Pam? Half an hour, 20 minutes?
I've got about 40 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, super. Yeah, we probably won't need all that time, but just to know how we stand. So I'd like to just ask Jane, because Jane is based in Ambleside. I don't know if you know where Ambleside is. It's in the Lake District in England, in northwest England, one of the most beautiful places on earth, the way we would see it, and it is. And Jane has, along with few other people, has put together a kind of health service, an alternative health service outside of the system. And what we're doing is, Jane tells me they've got quite a few interesting people involved in the Alexander technique, reflexology, a whole series of would you say therapeutics, healing methods?
Plus a GP, a surgeon, and a couple of nurses as well. Yeah.
Right. Just so that that's not just tokenism, is it? I mean, not just placating the skeptical here.
No. We're not discriminating. No. Yeah.
Good. So as Jane was saying, we were wanting to make it inclusive, not exclusive, and welcoming. So Jane has organised a drop-in centre on a Saturday for people to find out what it's about and who they might buddy up with in terms of who they feel would be most appropriate for them. And you have a website. Before we do anything else, do we have that website, and do we have the name of the website?
Well, it's ourcumbria.co.uk, but it is members only. So you apply and then you get invited.
Yeah. which is kind of a safe way to do it as well, isn't
I think
it?
that's the only way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And of
'Cause there's a
course, what is beautiful about the series of what I'm calling New World Visions is that it's not only listening to how other people do things, is where we can be inspired by each other and actually then connect up. I mean, we've had people on the Q&A after each presentation saying some beautiful things, other presenters saying very useful things. So anyone who would like to talk to Jane, do you have anything more to say before we go to the Q&A?
No, that's just a brief outline of what it is that we are in the process of creating. Yeah.
Right, so let me open it up to anyone here who would like to ask Jane any questions or have any comments, including you, Pam.
Oh, well, I'm kind of late to the party, so I'll just listen.
Right. I mean, what I'll do with you, Pam, later on is ask you what you've been doing and see how we can learn from you as well. But so all these people, do you have anyone who you think would be missing from your group, Jane, who you would like to find to join you?
Well, I would like an iridologist in our group, and I would like a clinical reflexologist. But we've got so many other. I think what I'm doing is I'm researching everybody in the area who is interested and seeing how we can include everybody. So what I'm not doing, because I've been a practitioner for nearly 30 years now, so there's lots of things that I know about, and I'm finding this really exhilarating because I can research things that I don't know about. Like for example, this afternoon I've been for a treatment with a Rife machine.
Yes, a Royal Rife machine.
Like a frequency and generator, and I'm just so excited about all these wonderful things that people are doing that could connect into this overall.
And interestingly, without necessarily going to great detail, you are making a point of investing certain monies into certain things so that you have the benefit of the access to these things without any problems. So whether you want to go into that is up to you.
Yes, there will be more research to be done, but we have it's quite a big group, actually, 37 people, and we spent a lot of time networking, like doing speed dating and getting to know each other and what it is that we're really into and what we feel confident about helping with. So a lot of it is navigating around the actual group. So there's 37 is quite a lot of people, really.
And so when did you start this and how much interest have you had so far?
We started it in January, so just a couple of months ago, and so we did a lot of talking about how we were going to do it, a lot of energy work, a lot of connecting. Then we did the speed dating. So we've only had three sessions so far, some drop-in sessions, and I would say we've had about 10 people so far.
Okay. Right. And when you say speed dating, do you actually mean speed dating, or are you talking about matching up with your therapeutic buddy or what?
Yeah, like talking to everybody in the group for like 10 minutes, and
speed healing.
and working out what it is that they do, so we will know who to recommend to whom. Yeah.
And just for clarification's sake, see, I'm not even going to say what he qualified in, because this whole thing about qualification, registration is part of the problem, which we need to address. And of course, one of the questions I would have is, are you talking about any kind of qualification or certification? Is this going to be relevant? Are we just going to be moving a million miles away from that? Because one of the issues I have, on the good side, the positive side about these certifications, qualifications, it gives people confidence to know what they're dealing with. Now, the trouble with the current set of names and letters behind in front of people is that we've got these things, but actually this has actually still worked against us, because what we find is the big pharma, everything is under the thumb of big pharma. Even with your accreditations, it's not always going to be easy to get out of the system. Now, I just want to know from your side, what do you think the challenges there are? Have you had anyone talk about any issues related to qualifications, registration, GMC? Do you expect any knocks on the door, any calls, communication from the existing system?
I think we've got enough imagination and enough skill to make this work the way we want it to work. It doesn't really reference, well, it possibly does, and we're not aware of it, but we're not wanting it to reference the existing system.
Yeah.
That's the exciting part of it for us, really. And then, of course, when we get people accessing the system, that helps to inform how we need to be, rather than an existing system. It's the people that are coming to us.
Yeah.
Like, for example, one person, she was in real trouble, but she didn't want anything to do with yoga or meditation or anything spiritual.
Right. Yeah. Horses for courses.
Yeah, that's right. We were able to do that. Somebody else, we've also done some, I have to say, we have done a few emergency responses for people in the community, people that were very ill at home, that would have died at home rather than call an ambulance. And that's very interesting as well. For example, I mean, one, his muscles on his side, so that was somebody doing resonance healing and dowsing while we went there, and then energy healing plus reflexology.
So we're going to have to move to Pam in a minute anyway.
Child couldn't breathe at home, so that was again a salt pipe and essential oil.
Yeah. Jane, you might be better off taking your video off, because we've got into connection problems there. But I think what we'll do is we'll go then, unless there's any more questions from anybody else, we'll go straight to Pam. Any more questions? No? Pam, thank you very much, Jane, for your presentation. We've got connection problems there. Hopefully you can stay with us. You might want to ask Pam some questions as well once she's done her presentation. So Pam, welcome aboard. Tell us what you're up to, what you've been up to, what your vision is for the world in which we wish to see, how you're going about it, and what are the challenges?
Well, you want to know what I've been doing in my healthcare company, or you?
Yeah. Could you explain first of all what you do, what you're about, essentially whatever you want to talk about in terms of what you are?
Okay, well, I started a healthcare company called Wellness Forum Health in 27 years ago, and basically, I came from a business background before I trained as a healthcare professional, and so I was looking at this from a business perspective. What's the gap in the marketplace that we needed to fill? And what seemed like the gap, and it turned out we were right about it, was we call it informed medical decision making. In other words, if you had to boil down what we do into a sentence, we help people get out of the medical mill. So our typical client is a person who has been hanging out with doctors for a long time, both conventional and alternative, not getting a lot better or getting worse usually. And so we start retrospectively looking at, like, were you diagnosed with fake diseases? It starts with, do you even have diagnoses that make sense? Because and on both sides, with conventional alternative medicine, you have the same kind of voodoo going on. What are the choices that you've made in reference to the things that have already happened to you? Good, bad, how much can we recover from some of the decisions that weren't so great? Did you even qualify for medication? We use databases like the NNT.com and that sort of thing. And then gradually over time, we start shifting people's thinking so that they're more proactive in advance. In other words, the way that people buy everything except healthcare that matters, cars, houses, college educations, retirement accounts, is they think carefully through their options. They investigate, they ask questions, and then they make an informed choice. And generally speaking, they make good choices because they have investigated, right? Healthcare is entirely different. Somebody
Yeah.
says you need an $80,000 surgery and you take out your appointment book and say, how about next Thursday? No thought or anything going into it, right? So that's basically what we do. We do business in 33 countries. And most of the time, our seasoned members, once we get them past like the 6 months to 12 months time period, they know more about their options and what they're doing than their very highly educated doctors do. And doctors will sometimes say, where'd you get all that information? And some of my people, a little bit tongue in cheek, will say, medical journals, you might want to try reading them sometime. They're full of information that would help you not advise people to do what you're telling me to do. So anyway, that's what I've been doing for 27 years. And so our current debacle, I knew exactly what this is because they've done it before. They've been practicing. I mean, this isn't our first fake pandemic. And so they've been practicing for a long time to do what they're doing now. And
something to do with birds. Bird flu?
Well, that's
not just that.
No, it's the whole thing. I mean, I put out a video on March 10th of 2020 telling everybody what this was and who was behind it. And the end game was going to be forced vaccination. And it's not because I'm prophetic or a psychic. It's because they've done it before. In 2009, they actually did fake a worldwide pandemic. There was a big kerfuffle about it. I mean, people were upset. There was $18 billion squandered, which is tiny compared to what they've done here, right? But in any case, they got away with it. They've been getting away with this stuff for decades, actually. And so to try to do it again in a bigger way to get to an even more nefarious goal, this goes way beyond making drug companies rich at this point in time, is kind of the natural next step for predators who hate people. So anyway,
I've noticed that without going too much into this area, because I'm going to keep this as positive as possible. But the latest thing is like the World Health Assembly. I just wonder if that middle word would be dropped at some point.
Well, probably, and people make way too much out of this. First of all, the big thing that I've observed is that people insist on doing the same things now that they've done for 50 years while they've tried to keep this from happening and it didn't work, but they want to do more of it. You know why? Because it's easy. Right here, exactly. Sign that. You know, the type of work that we're doing is hard work and people are looking for some easy way to survive this whole thing, and there isn't any easy way to do it. But having said that, what this group does doesn't really make any difference. What makes a difference is a country's willingness to go along. In other words, I could set up a committee here and say, we're going to decide what the world's going to do. But if the world doesn't go along, then I haven't decided anything, have I?
I think it's about incentive, isn't it? They've used various tools to incentivize people to go down a certain path.
Well, yes, but the bottom line is you have to have people who are receptive to those incentives. And just by way of example, here in the United States, our former president took us out of the WHO, stopped funding them, said we're not members, do whatever you want to do. We're not going to be part of that. And I suspect that the next president will do the same thing. It's a terrible organization. It's not concerned about health at all. And even here in the United States, I don't know how familiar you are with our form of government, but everything's local. The states have all the rights. And so you probably have noticed all the chaos over here, like whoever resides in the White House, and we have somebody there now that doesn't even know what day of the week it is, but he says, this is what we're going to do. And half of the states go, yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're going to do something else. And it's like herding cats here in the United States. So here we'll be relatively unaffected by it almost no matter what happens. And around the world, if people would get focused on the right things, they can insulate themselves as well. So anyway, that's, and when I say the right things, there's no problem that is in front of us that cannot be solved by uniting enough people, and the definition of enough depends on your country. All right, I've set the threshold at 80 million in my country. That's what you need. I mean, if you're going to have a different healthcare system, you're going to have a different banking system, you're going to have the ability to just demand that people stop doing something or start doing something, you have to aggregate lots of people. And so while everybody's running around screaming and hollering with their fists in the air about the injustice of all this, they're missing the things that really would make a difference. And I think we have to get to the place where we understand the difference between venting and problem solving. All right.
Yeah.
venting all weekend is great, but it doesn't. And Monday morning, it's just as bad as it was on
It's
Friday.
exactly what I've just been saying, that I keep saying to people, and in fact, I've just been listening to Rainer Fulvig with Shambhala, who's a lawyer who was talking more recently, I think on the 98th evidence video. And she was talking about exactly the same thing, disengage from the system. And I say, disengage from the system, engage with the heart. Because your heart, your intuition knows exactly what to do. It's my best friend and my best guide. Now we can find medical practitioners, or as I prefer to say, health practitioners, who acknowledge that. Then I think people are going to be feeling more comfortable with the person they're dealing with. And the big issue to me is, or one of the big issues is, do we need a centralized health system, for a state, for instance, or should it not all be localized, very much like Jane is doing, not just talking about, but doing as well?
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with geography. I think it has to do with philosophy. And what's going to happen is, and we see this here in the United States, is all these people are fleeing the healthcare system. Consumers and practitioners don't want to be part of it, and they're setting up the same thing on their own.
This is what I'm concerned about, in a
so,
way.
And it's not the same thing as in tied to big financial institutions and all that. It's the same inept practice. In other words, I'm a trained naturopath. 90% of what I learned, and this is the way I think all medical schools are, right? So the first 2 years, there's nothing to argue with. Anatomy is anatomy, and you can't mess up chemistry. And pharmacology, I mean, what a statin drug does, there's not too much you can mess up. You're studying principles, basic principles we all agree on. The second 2 years, I call it the voodoo in my field, all right? I got indoctrinated with the voodoo. So if I'm practicing voodoo, and like I said, everybody's guilty. You take any branch of medicine, they're practicing voodoo, right? So it doesn't matter if you're tied in with the local hospital system or you're in a clinic where they practice the voodoo. If you leave those places and you go practice the voodoo all by yourself, sitting alone in the room, you haven't solved any problems. And the voodoo is expensive on both sides, all right? So, a good example of the voodoo in the healthcare, the conventional healthcare system is you test and test and test and test until you find some marker that's abnormal. And it's actually maybe a risk factor, maybe not actually, but you treat it as if it's a disease, and you drug the person and all that's voodoo, all right? And then you go to an alternative practitioner who uses more ridiculous tests and diagnoses you with fake diseases, and then they give you supplements and light therapy and on and on and on. And by the way, there's a place for all of this, but the reason why it's overused is there's no money in any of it using it appropriately. All right. Yeah. So the whole point I'm making, and I get called probably once a week by a group that wants to start a healthcare company, and I'm happy to share with them, because I think there's room for everybody to do something in this field. There's so many people, so much need that
especially
if I had 100 competitors doing what I'm doing, it wouldn't make any difference tomorrow, right? So, but what I tell them is, your biggest, when I say talk to these people, I say you're good and well-intentioned. Everybody needs an alternative, but the biggest risk that you have is you're going to take all these people who are fleeing from the healthcare system, and you're going to put them in a smaller environment that's exactly the same as the one they left. So the doctor who overdiagnoses and overprescribes over at Mount Carmel Medical Center will now do it in his own office, all right? Because he doesn't know any different, because he was trained by drug reps in medical school, and the naturopath who learned that you give me a symptom, I'll give you a supplement. Doesn't matter if they're with a clinic in their own office, it doesn't matter. You duplicate that kind of behavior and you're not solving any problems. And so this is an
fewer drugs pushes.
Well, you need, but you also need some rules of evidence. I think the biggest thing that we've done that's been a game changer worldwide, in my opinion, is that the medical journals are filled with such crap right now. I mean, just absolute unmitigated crap. And they have been for a long time. Editors were talking about this 20 years ago. So you tell me something you want to say about healthcare. Give me any statement you want to make. The more chocolate you eat, the more weight you lose. I can find a study that says that that's true. All right. You tell me the higher the fat, the better the health. I can show you a study, right? All right, so if you're going to play this game, here's a study, there's a study. I read a book, you read a book. I went to my doctor, you went to your doctor. I went to this website, you went to a different one. So this is how the voodoo spreads, because there's always something that you can point to that substantiates anything you're going to say. So what we basically did is we said, listen, let's treat the medical literature like we treat football. Okay. So what do I mean by that? In football, there are rules. Okay, so American football, the quarters are 15 minutes, always. The first down is 10 yards, always. You can field goals between the posts. There's no other way you can have a field goal. Has to kick between there, right? So you play thousands of football games all over the world. And at the end of the year, you've got people fussing about 10 plays where they think they got called wrong. But the thousands of games, we know exactly who won because we have rules of the game, right? All right, so let's go to the medical literature. Let's start applying those same rules. And you can arrive at conclusions where there actually are right and wrong answers. All right, so here are just a couple of our rules. I mean, there are 19. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll tell you some that just give you an idea. Should we consider conflicts of interest? I think so. All right, let's find out who these authors are and what they're up to. How about study design? You know, every weight loss plan looks good at 12 weeks. All of them. You tell people to stand on their head and sing Christmas carols at lunchtime, they lose weight the first 12 weeks, right? So the study design has a lot to do with this. Inclusion criteria. How are the subjects picked? Drug companies are famous for using run-ins, where you identify your placebo responders and get them out, and you get the drug responders and keep them in. Confusing correlation with a cause and effect relationship. The whole vitamin D hoax is based on that misunderstanding. It's a big one, and it influences medicine in ways that you can't even believe, all right? Something can be statistically significant and clinically meaningless, all right? You shrink a tumor for 6 months and the person dies 2 years later anyway. You come out with a drug that reduces the incidence of chest pain from an average of 6 times a week to 5 times a week. Statistically significant means nothing to the consumer, all right? So there's 19 of them. And so you arrive at right answers almost all the time. And then when people argue with you, because there really are things you can figure out, right, wrong, this, that, yes, no, all right? So when people argue with me, I tell them, well, you know what? I'm happy to have a debate with you. Actually, we can do it in public. I'm going to give you the 19 criteria. You tell me which ones you want taken out, okay? So maybe you would like to announce to my rather large audience that you don't think conflicts of interest matter, or you think that things that are statistically significant and clinically meaningless are really great. You just tell me which one. We'll make that announcement in the beginning, and then you and I will talk. Well, nobody will show up for that discussion, right? So that's basically what we did, and we developed a big worldwide following in 33 countries. We do business. Because that gets rid of what plagues consumers. I know what I'm doing is not right, but every time I talk to somebody different, I get a different answer. And now I'm more confused than I was before. And while I was getting more confused, I got sicker than I was before, right? So anyway, that's what we did and what we've brought to the healthcare table.
So on that point, do you have anything that you would say would be sort of totems that someone like Jane and her group could actually say, well, this is what we believe, like, for instance, you know, no conflicts of interest? Is a sort of guide, maybe a simple guide book or leaflet or set of principles that you could share, or you would suggest that for the health system or the care system, whatever you would call it, going forward?
Well, that's what we do, and you can't teach it in 4 minutes. All right, so this is what we teach our members, and we own a school that trains health professionals, and we teach them how to look at things through this lens and then change their practices accordingly, whatever branch of medicine they're in. Right. And it's important. The most important thing is that the consumer understand it, because this is another thing that I observed. Back in, I think it was 1996, I opened my company, and this buzz term, I don't know if it circulated in the UK, but it's take control of your health. You hear that all the time. You got to take control of your health. And I think in principle, we all agree with that, right? Mm-hmm. But here's what take control of your health came to mean. I don't like what this doctor is telling me, so I'm going to go find another doctor to tell me. All right, you haven't changed anything because you have no idea what you're doing. And I tell people every day, adults, I say, listen, an adult should not have to justify a decision to anybody. I mean, you're grown up, you can do whatever you want. But the reality is, if you can't explain to somebody why you're not getting a shingles vaccine, then you don't know why you're not getting a shingles vaccine. Somebody told you not to do that, you said okay. But if you just keep listening to other people and doing, and you have no understanding of what you're doing or why you're doing it, you're going to get in trouble. That's how you ended up here. All right. So the most important thing about this is that you not only learn it yourself, but you don't just start giving out better instructions, that you engage the patient. And then this is where there is variation in response. So think about it like real estate. All right. So a real estate agent shows a consumer a house. And the first person who sees the house says, oh my gosh, look at this beautiful wooded lot, all those trees, it'll be like living in a city park. Second person looks at that same house and says, oh my God, look at all these trees. I'm going to be doing yard work every day for the rest of my life. I don't want to live here. It's the same house, but the value systems driving the decisions are different.
Yeah.
Right. So one person has a procedure out of an abundance of caution because that's the way their mind rolls. Another person says, no way I'm going to do that. I actually don't think my risk is that big. I'm not going to do it. Same set of circumstances, but different perspectives. And so that is where the individual, where the consumer understanding of the options becomes very, very important, because and sometimes my members will ask me, well, what would you do? And I tell them, I'm not going to tell you. And it's not because I'm trying to be a smart aleck. It's because I know that I have a particular profile of how I make decisions and what risk I can tolerate, which might be very different from yours. And so the right answer for me in this situation may be very uncomfortable for you. And
so I'm guessing that you'd actually have the, for want of a better word, patient, unless you have another word for that, the person comes to see you. You want to listen to what they think their issue is. What do you have? I mean, the listening thing is going to be a very vital and important thing. The people I'm talking to, I know that in my own world, I do a little bit of healing myself, but the people I'm talking to, in this new way of going on, this is exactly what they're doing. There's a lot more listening going on. Of course, what we find over here is doctors they say they have about 10 minutes for each patient. Now, I think for most of us who are more awake about what we need to be doing, 10 minutes is usually not enough.
Right.
I don't know, what do you would think? Maybe we need half an hour, or maybe sometimes several sessions.
Well, we look at it differently. We don't sell time by the hour, and we don't sell one appointment at a time. You join, you pay an annual fee, and then it's our job to make that fee viable enough for you to pay it on an annual basis.
Right. Yeah.
Most of the people we're sorting out are not going to get sorted out in even a year. And just think about it. If you are, I'll give you a profile of somebody I've been working with. This woman's 45 and she's going through a divorce that she doesn't want. She's taking 2 psychiatric drugs. She's a binge eater. She's 150 pounds overweight. She's taking 2,000 milligrams of metformin a day. She has migraine headaches, irregular menstrual periods, and a banged up knee. All right, now you're not going to solve that by the end of this year. All right. So the type of thinking that has allowed her to get sucked into the medical mill to this level, there's nothing wrong with her. There's not a drug or a supplement to treat that. It takes a long time just to undo the mental process, right? So we sell annual memberships, and our renewal rate's very, very high, because people like the idea that once we get everything all sorted out, which usually takes a while, depending on how deep into the medical mill they've been thrust, then they like the idea of, okay, now I'm all straightened around. So when something new comes up, these people know all about me. I have a relationship with them. Exactly. So I can make an appointment and say, this new thing has happened, and I want to, before I do anything, I want to look into it. You've taught me that before I take any action, I need to look into it further. And you're right, over here is the same as over there. The doctors don't have any time. And furthermore, they don't know how to do it. In other words, going back to what I said earlier, where our clients are going in with information and saying, the reason I'm not going to do this is these 4 things. And they're going, well, where'd you get that information? Well, our people are pretty good at reading medical journals. They'll say, I looked at the outcomes data for this cancer treatment. It shows that if I do what you're telling me to do, I'm going to live for 27 months longer than if I do nothing. Well, I'm 44 years old. I don't want to live 27 months. I'm trying to live my full lifespan, right? So anyway, so they're much more proactive going forward, and they want to stay that way.
What I would what I feel is that I'm hoping you would agree, but I think people need to be empowered about what it is that makes or maintains their health. So, you know, it's up to us to be our own medical expert in a way, because we are the ones who are causing, or the thing is our problems are caused within our own life, our own ways of doing things. And I think really what I'm saying is that people are expecting the answer, the solution from someone will tell them what it is.
Right.
Rather than what I'm saying is, let's look at the lifestyle, let's look at what makes us healthy. I mean, one very small example, it's not even particularly about a health issue, but you know, we produced, my friend and myself produced a raw food recipe book, PDF at this stage, we need to print it. But the idea is to incentivize people to have a better diet, nutrition, and so on. You know, for men over here in this country for many years, especially everyone in this country in the UK, we would have very sort of mangy looking salad. Men don't tend or didn't traditionally ask for salad because the presentation wasn't very good. They didn't know the benefits of those foods. Once I started looking into it, I couldn't get enough of salad. I mean, I thought, well, I like, you know, men like meaty things. So once you introduce them to the idea that you've got a different approach of salads, the way that you present them, the types of foods you could put into those things, the leaves are beneficial, A, B, C, many types of things, different herbs will do different things, you know, whether it's dandelion roots are good for the heart, whatever it is, you can incentivize people to get out there into the garden, into the woods, wherever, into the fields, and do their own foraging and make their own salads. They feel they've had a part to play in that whole process, not taken something from the shop. I'm encouraging people to grow stuff now. I'm making raised beds on wheels out of pallet wood. Why? Because I like the idea of 3D growing. We can grow things out of the side. Now, if I can incentivize someone to say, look, how beautiful this looks, and I'm getting more produce within sort of square meter here, cubically, and you know, I'm looking forward to getting out there and being with my plants and so on, all the care that goes into it, you're going to get back in not only the nutrition you're getting out of it, but there's a whole sort of different lifestyle associated with that, and all the benefits you get from being in nature. Now, rather than saying, do this, do that, I'd much rather say to people, how about this is an example of a lifestyle. These are things that I think are good for us. It's good for me. I found a big difference in my life. And I think the incentivization way is the way to go forward. Another example is biomimicry, which I thought I invented in the late 80s, that I found out about Victor Schauberger, all these sort of people. You find that there's something out there to benefit from nature. You can be incentivized. Now, kids are one of those, the problems we had over here was getting the kids into science, into the sciences. Ooh. My feeling, apart from having done some advertising to get people into the sciences, my approach is more to do with inspiration. Rather than saying you'll get a great career out of this, why don't we look at the inspirational side of it? So I'm sure there's a lot we can do on the health side to inspire people with good examples to get them to change their lifestyle and to realize where they're going wrong in the first place. And it's not just about the, say, 90 nutrients that some of us feel that we do need. There's other examples, and I think we need to show examples of people who have suffered in certain ways, if they're up for it, and then showing the benefit of how they changed their lifestyle and how they changed their life and got rid of their issues. So do you do a lot of that sort of incentivization from giving concrete examples of people?
We don't do any of it. We don't do any of it.
But you don't think that would be a good idea, or what are the reasons
Well,
why?
I'm just coming at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Right. So part of the problem is let's take somebody who needs to lose 100 pounds. I've been in a lot of very popular documentaries, right? And so in the popular documentaries, we always take perfect patients who have a problem or a couple of problems. And everything lines, and you've seen this, right? So the person is diabetic and has high blood pressure and overweight. And their families are remarkably supportive, and they're so committed to this. And their doctors, which are arranged by the documentary, take them off their drugs the first day. And then in 90 days, they're in great shape, right? And life is fantastic. And this can be yours. All right. Well, if you're making a 96-minute documentary, that's pretty much what you can do, because you don't have time to get into all the messy stuff that goes on in people's lives. So it's inspirational, but it's also incredibly discouraging, because 9 out of 10 people don't have that experience. They have a spouse who's not on board. They have a doctor who says you can never stop taking these drugs. They have no time to cook. They have to travel for their job. They're binge eating because they're miserable. And so now that they don't need another testimonial. What they need is for somebody to show them how to deal with this. And then you get into the people on my side of the issue who can be, I call it, just as tone deaf as the doctor, all right, as conventional doctors. Well, you got to go home and get your spouse on board. Well, listen, if this depends on your spouse getting on board, you're going to end up in an argument. It's going to have nothing to do with food. It's just going to be people taking a stand. You have to work around that, all right? So I think that the bottom line is that this goes back to, when I'm helping somebody, first of all, what I do makes no difference at all. It makes none. I never share. I mean, people know about me because I'm a public person, but I don't talk about what I do. The company's not called I Want to Be Like Pam. The company is called Wellness Forum Health. My decisions are completely separate, and a good decision for me may not be a very palatable decision for somebody else. So we have to look at, where are you? What is going on with you? And I need to tie whatever it is that we're going to do to your particular problems, all right? And when you see that the pathway to solving a problem important to you is to change your behavior in a certain way, now we're coming at it from a different motivational standpoint. So there's a difference between cheerleading. There's a lot of cheerleading going on. It comes from a very intentional, good intention basis, but you can't cheerlead somebody to health. All right. And it goes to a very important principle we use here, and we teach healthcare professionals. There's a difference between education and intervention. Education is the stuff you need to know. Intervention is how we make this work in your context, in your world, to the extent that you are looking for it to work. All right. And so there are, and by the way, there are certain principles that you're stuck with. It's almost impossible to lose 100 pounds while eating a high-fat diet after the first 12 weeks, all right? It's just, you can't, that calorie density, you just can't get away from. I could gain 50 pounds on a high-fat diet. 1 tablespoon of oil has 14 grams of fat. How much can I eat of that and still weigh 119 pounds? Okay, not gonna happen, right? So you're stuck with certain principles, but within those principles, there is so much variability. I have people who do not cook at all. You have to teach them how to do this. If this is contingent upon learning to cook and falling in love with cooking, you just can't get there.
And they're not eating raw food.
Well, you can eat a lot of raw food, and it doesn't have to be so time consuming. You know, again, we have to make it fit in with theirs. So we spend a lot of time on the behavioral part of it, and a lot of time listening to people and less talking. When I got into this business, I was all about telling people stuff. I'm much more interested now in hearing and then responding to what you said, not to what I'd already planned to tell you before you came in. You know?
Here. Yeah, and this is why we produced the book Nourish to Flourish, because they are pretty quick recipes. It's all blended, and then the testing is in the eating of the pudding, as I say.
Right.
And so Pam, anyone else you'd like to address with? Anyone that you could suggest in terms of who incentivized you, who inspired you, who you think is interesting to mention as well?
I've been inspired by a lot of people, actually. I mean, I think that Dean Ornish did a great job in the beginning of not only showing the impact of diet on heart disease, but he was really the first, and he's one of the few who has basically said it's more than just what you eat. We have to look at your psychological profile. Are you exercising? You can't overcome heart disease and keep smoking cigarettes, for crying out loud, so
how many dandelion roots are you eating?
Yeah, so he's he really has always come at this with a comprehensive approach, and I think that that's been a very important thing that I've looked at. One of my business partners is Dr. Peter Bregan, who has single-handedly taken on the psychiatric profession over these psychiatric drugs and taught me that there is no such thing as mental illness. All people have psychological problems, and drugs aren't the way to solve them, you know,
Absolutely.
and they are solvable. Very, very influenced by that. I've been influenced by some physical therapists who practice outside the norm, who show that you can take almost anybody and restore them to good mechanical function. So lots and lots of people, I think, who have influenced me in different ways to look at things from an outcomes-based approach. And I think that's maybe the most important thing, and the thing that I have in common with the people I admire in this field is they basically say, okay, here you are for the first time we're going to talk. What are you looking for? What is the outcome you're looking for? Medicine is so tone deaf to this. It's again, we just want to, put out the brush fire for right now and whatever, kick the can down the road. Yeah, this drug has side effects, but it doesn't work so well in the long term. But right now, we don't have to worry about it for a little while, So looking at it, what are people looking for? They want a long life and they want to have a good life. All right. And we have to make sure that in the process of living the long life, we don't make it so it can't be a good life with all kinds of silly rules. Like if you have a cookie, you're going to die. And if you have a glass of wine on your birthday, you're going to die. And
you want to enjoy certain things that may not be healthy, but
and what you learn in medical school is the dose is the poison. The Okinawans do not eat perfect diets, and those Okinawan women have a little sip of sake every day.
Just remind me, just spell the name, Okinawan.
Okinawan in Japan. The Okinawan women are the longest lived people in the world. They live to be between 110 and 120 years old. Wow. And they don't eat a perfect diet, all right? But what they do, and the common denominator with all the blue zones and the healthy populations in the planet, is that and it's usually for economic reasons, is that most of what they do is health promoting so that they can afford to have a birthday party. They can afford to have, something special on Christmas morning or whatever, right? So they differentiate the difference between food and a treat. So I tell people all the time, today's Friday. I think every day is a great day. I'm happy to be alive. But you know what? Today is Friday. There's nothing special about today. So today is a day where we eat food. Yeah. And food is not toaster pastries. Food is not chocolate. Darn it. Food is not wine. So we just eat food today. Now, this is a holiday weekend. Sunday's Easter. Tonight at sundown, it's Passover. We're going to have a celebration. Most of us are going to have a celebration sometime over this weekend of some sort, right? And so that's when you have wine. That's when you have dessert. That's when you have something special. And
we celebrate life.
And then you know what we do on Monday? We get up in the morning and we have smoothies and oatmeal. No, not if you do it right. Not if you do it right.
Because that's affecting your mental outlook. Anything that's sort of negative is actually going to work against you. You keep it positive. And the guilt thing is not useful at all, is it?
Well, it's not. And the other thing too is we have too many people pushing perfectionism. And I'd much rather have 10 years of not perfect, but enough to be healthy rather than 30 days of perfection and then the person's off the path.
One point that I often talk about is the fact that don't you think that if we're not growing our own, going to shop or having it delivered even these days, as it usually is for a lot of people, shouldn't food that is just food, that is good food, not be labeled? For instance, we're buying organic food, but my feeling is we should turn it all around and say, look, if it's not good food, not grown in the most healthy way, then surely we must be labeling that and calling that a name. Never mind the organic, that should be just a given that you're going to get good food. But if it's not so good as it should be, give it another name or give it a grading, whatever it is. But
well, now we're adding a layer of complication. Right now here in the United States, it's tax season. All right. So tax season, accountants are crazy until about the end of June. Right. Yeah. Same. Okay. So when I have an accountant who's got high blood pressure and we don't want him to have a heart attack, I need to make this as easy as possible because he's going to be working 15 hours a day and he's got 2 kids and a wife who works in the office. And so how are we going to make this fit in? And grading the lettuce is not part of the plan. You can't do that. All right. And not if you want to succeed. All right. So the one of the things that I think is important to point out is that there's a lot of science. I mean, an enormous amount of science on change. What makes people change? What makes people stick with it? The process, how long it takes. And most of what people think about that is just as wrong as what most people think about many health-related issues. All right. So there are 2 things that determine whether or not somebody is even going to make the decision to move forward with changing something. The first one is, and it's an easy threshold, I think this will benefit me. The second one is, I can see myself doing this. That's where it all falls apart.
Yeah, the visualization part.
Right, right. Well, it's not just the visualization, it's the realistic. How realistic is this for me? All right. So when I said the company isn't called I Want to Be Like Pam, let me tell you why. Nobody wants to be like Pam. I'm a lunatic. People will tell you that. All right.
That's what I talk about. How I describe myself.
I'm an extremist. Everything I do to excess. I make decisions on a dime. That's not the way most people do this, right? So the point that I'm making is that, and the other thing too is there's no consideration in many instances about the process of arriving at a point. Like where I am right now with what I do with my health didn't happen like this. It happened over a period of time, and I'm bringing people into a system of discovery that's going to take a period of time too. But I have to, if I miss this, the person has to be able to see themselves doing it. If I miss that point, we're done before we start. All right, so the most important thing is not to start dictating we have to eat these foods, or we have to have 90 nutrients, or these are the, everybody has to have the 12 foods for lunch, and you have to make sure it's all organic, and you have to make sure that you only buy it from these stores, and if you don't know the source, okay, you start putting in all these rules, and then a person who showed up all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I don't want to take blood pressure medication, I'm out of breath all the time, and I can't wait to sleep, and sometimes I sleep on the floor of my office. No matter how motivated they are when they come in, you can demotivate within a very short period of time.
How to complicate, making things complicated.
Right. Yeah. So I just want my people
basic simple principles.
I don't care where those plants come from. You just eat plants. And then the other thing too is that if you can get them on the path, if you can get them and keep them on the path, where they end up is sometimes shocking to them. All right. I have friends who said in the beginning, one of the reasons that I'm willing to do this is because you've never demanded that people be vegan. I don't demand that people do anything, but you never went into the vegan and you go, okay, they're vegan, all right, but because we let that decision happen later on. They didn't need to be vegan to get off their blood pressure medication.
They probably got educated about what is good for them.
The decision comes later as they become more educated, like you said. So I think that I think there's a lot of well-meaning stuff going on out there, and people want to show an alternative to the god-awful medical system that exists in almost every country right now.
Which we've lost trust and faith in altogether, of course.
Right, but we just have to make sure that we're, you cannot listen for 45 minutes, just like you cannot listen for 7. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can I just ask you one more thing? Because you've talked fantastically, beyond your 40 minutes, I must say.
No problem.
Just this final thing about the getting out of the system. I'm saying to people, just ignore what you have already. What can they do? Now, what any comments you have about that as a guide for people wanting to do an alternative thing outside of the medical system?
Well, I think what you have to do is you have to start looking at what the consumer is looking for. And the first thing is that, again, you've got to make sure you're not just duplicating the same thing in a different setting. All right. When we are going to build a healthcare system over here, and the basis for it will be this informed process. All right. So this goes to, I'm a big fan of a lot of alternative practices, and I take advantage of them. All right. But the bottom line is having a type 2 diabetic circulating amongst massage therapists and herbalists that's a lot of time invested in not going to fix that problem, right? So the first thing you have to do is you've got to deal with the problem at hand. This is and this is from my background in business. When I worked for a great big company, here's the questions we used to ask ourselves all the time. What do people want to buy? What are they expecting to get? What are they interested in? What are they willing to pay? What's the metric for knowing that you achieved what they thought they were going to get when they gave you this money, right? So we come at this from a different perspective than I'm interested in this, so I'm going to tell you about this, right? So what people want, when we were looking at this 27 years ago, people want out of the medical mill. They want to live a long life, and they want to live a good life. A good life meaning they don't want to spend it hanging out with doctors and in hospitals and bankrupt their family and all that kind of stuff. All right. So what you have to do then is you have to have the shortest distance between the 2 points where they're starting And when they see something getting better, because you're not going to collect an annual fee from people who hang out with you a long time and don't get better. And if you don't get them better, it'll economically bury you outside the system. This is what I tell people who think they're going to put $1 billion into starting a healthcare system. You can put 20 billion into starting a healthcare system. And if you don't shorten that space between entering and getting better based on evidence, you're going to be bankrupt, just like the current system. Only government isn't going to back you up. You're going to just plain be bankrupt, right? So the key is thinking this through. In other words, when you're trying to do something that is going to revolutionize an industry, it's got to be done with a whole lot of thought. And when I'll give you an example in another field. When the car companies from foreign countries came into the United States, all right, and our industry, the healthcare industry, is in this place right now. We had 3 car makers in the United States, all right. They were selling expensive cars that didn't work very well. And they were so bloated with administration that it took 17 signatures at General Motors to change the paint color on a car, all right. So what you've got is bad products that are getting worse by the year and costing more. So when Honda came into the United States, and then Kia and all these different car companies, the first thing is they basically said, we're not going to go to General Motors and see if we can help them make better cars. We're going to go over here. That was in Detroit. We're going to go to Marysville, Ohio. We're going to make we're going to set up our own plant. We're going to make a different kind of car that we think people want to buy. All right. Not the General Motors car with different paint. People said they wanted different paint. We're going to make a different kind of car that is actually better. It's going to be less expensive. It's going to be more efficient, last longer. And we're going to have our own dealerships over here to sell it. We're not even going to sell it in the same place they sell those cars. They destroyed the car market in the United States with that approach, right? So that's basically what we're doing. And the big flaw I see in what everybody's trying to do is to essentially say, I'm leaving this system. I'm going to go over here, and it's kind of look like that system, only it's going to be better because I'm better, because I care more, because I spend more time.
Buckminster Fuller way, build it and they'll come if it's a better system, if it's demonstrably a better system. Yeah.
Right. So the car was entirely different. It didn't look like General Motors. It didn't look like Buick. It didn't look like Ford. It didn't look like New Chrysler, right? It's a different car made by a different company with a different approach to the customer. Mm-hmm. So, we could talk about this for a long time, and I love talking about it because I think it is the future of healthcare. But, and like I said, I don't mind sharing all my quote unquote secrets, because if everybody did it tomorrow, if everybody who had the money and the business skill to do it started tomorrow, there are 350 million people in the United States. I only need about 10 million of them to make my system work. And that means there's plenty of room for people to have 340 million people, right? So, but
it's growing. And you see there's a lot more people taking interest in what you're doing and what maybe other people are doing in similar ways in the States.
Well, nobody's doing it in a similar way. That's my whole point. I talk to people every week who are setting up an alternative system, and I'm telling them, I'll tell you everything I know about this, because what you're going to do, and I talked to somebody just a few days ago, I said, you guys have $1 billion to invest, and you're going to lose it if you don't change your thinking about this. Because what you're talking about is taking what appear to be open-minded people who are on the right side of like this COVID issue and putting them in a clinic. And because you're assuming because they called this one right, that they're not going to overprescribe blood pressure medication. And that's an assumption. It's going to bury you. All right. And so lots of good intentions, not very much understanding of the marketplace. And the mistake that you make is that doctors and healthcare professionals do not understand how to make people healthy on an evidence-based way, based on our rules of evidence, right?
Well, the traditional ones, in the system.
The alternative ones don't know how to do it either. The naturopaths in my city are as bad or worse than the conventional doctors. I tell people, you are much better off with a conventional doctor than you are with a naturopath. I don't even use my initials anymore, all right? Go find a doctor, a real one, right? Because we can negotiate with that doctor, and he's got access to everything you need, right? If you're informed, right? So you've got this going on in the health profession, but then you've got, but with the people with all the money, they haven't taken the time to understand enough about health to know how to manage it. So that would be like me getting into the car business, right? Now I'll tell you, I think I'm really smart, and I could learn the car business. I could. But the fact that I have money to invest in the car business doesn't mean that right now I can manage the car business. Smart enough to learn, yes. Big, stupid mistake to spend a lot of money getting into the automobile business and not take the time to really understand what's wrong with it, right? So we have a lot of people throwing money at it that don't understand the system, and they don't understand how to evaluate, or the fact, maybe not how to evaluate, but they don't understand that there's nobody. Let me put it this way: there's nobody out there who I haven't trained, who I would hire to work in this building. Nobody. Okay, because as soon as you stop talking about COVID, let's put it that way, all right, open-minded on the vax and all the kinds of, but let's shift to another topic. Number needed to treat for cholesterol medications that look like you flew in from space, all right? So this thing we're dealing with is going to pass at some point. There will be different issues. The core issues that are costing all the money, the musculoskeletal issues, the psychological issues, the heart disease, the cancer, the diabetes, endocrinology, neurology, all that, as soon as they go back to that, they will do exactly the same thing that they have always done: overdiagnose, overprescribe, medicate. Go to the naturopath, the alternative people, they will they'll overdiagnose using different diseases. Everybody's got candida, everybody's got heavy metal toxicity. We all know that everybody's got brain fog and adrenal fatigue. And that's just as much nonsense as, your cholesterol is 175, you need statins, right? So they will do the same thing. It'll cost less in the beginning, but it costs more when the problem doesn't get resolved. So to do this and do it right, you have to set up some rules for, look at it from the consumer standpoint, because you're going to ask them to pay out of pocket. You got to have some rules for how you're going to conduct the business of healthcare in a clinical setting.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You have the totems, there's principles that we can share. So that's just to help other people set up the same, not the same system. I think everything has to reflect the local need, doesn't it? But there will be maybe some totems that would be universal in any particular care operation. Put it that way.
Right. So it's a fascinating discussion. And I think the good news about all this upheaval is it's maybe the only thing that could actually shift it.
Exactly. And this is the way to view life, isn't it? Any negative thing, it's how I became calmer than I used to be. I used to have earache, headaches, because of this conflict in my head. And then I realized, why I'm being delayed in the traffic, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe if I was there particularly on time, or making my journey on time, maybe there's an accident waiting to happen further down the road. Maybe there's a reason that you're in this queue here, or you've been delayed. The universe is looking after you after all. So there's an apparent negative can actually be a positive. I think it's a very nice way, a very practical way of seeing life. It certainly affected me in a better way.
Yeah, well, and I think if you look at it that way, like you said, first of all, it takes the panic out of life, and that's I think that's a major role that we have to play in healthcare right now. Is we've got to get people beyond feeling panicked all the time and show them that there's something to look forward to.
Calm down and carry on. It's just a commercial, dear.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. Just very quickly, I'm not sure if we have any questions for Pam before we go. No, I think Sharon's not going to be asking any questions. She would do already if she had any. But I know that you've given us an awful lot of time there, an hour actually, Pam. So thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we worked it out.
Yes, indeed. In fact, there's a lot more working out to go beyond this as well in practice. And so if we have any questions from people who might want to learn from you, if you wouldn't mind me passing them on to you, that'd be great.
My email address, Pam Popper at msn.com.
Exactly.
I answer my email.
Popper at msn.com.
msn.com. Right.
Beautiful.
MSN.
Many thanks, Pam.
All right. Thank you. You have a nice
good
weekend.
evening. Yeah. And you can see this on the People's Forum, the recording as well.
All right.
I'll send the link. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Pam. Bye-bye.